Hey everyone, it's Joyce Strong. Welcome to Rock Bottom Syndicate. Syndicate is a group of individuals or organizations combined to promote some common goal. Our common interest at Rock Bottom Syndicate is to be of service. Rock Bottom is my community of friends who, after having hit rock bottom, discovered that being of service to help others has a surprising side effect. We get better. We make better decisions. We go on to live strong, joyous lives. Rock Bottom is about people who have a story to tell, to inspire others to keep working toward their potential no matter what happens. Rock Bottom is an opportunity to learn, pivot, and adapt to whatever life throws our way. Rock Bottom is a time where you can choose to take responsibility for everything in your life, because when you take responsibility, you get the control to change things for yourself. Your secrets are the prison of your emotions, and telling your story will set you free to be yourself, to heal and grow, and be the person you've always wanted to be and enjoy creating a strong, joyous life. So I ask you to tell your story, ask for help. In this episode, I have Errin Weisman. She is a doctor of osteopathy, Errin Weisman, D.O., and she's a life coach, a physician, and podcaster. And Dr. Me First is the name of her podcast, and her website is called truthrxs.com, so truthprescriptions.com. She specializes in burnout, especially in female physicians, and that's what she does. But the reason she knows so much about this is she suffered burnout herself as a young physician, newly minted, just really launching her career. Marriage, children, life got in the way, a lot of complications. It just didn't fit who she is. And so rather than giving up, which she was tempted to do, and she'll tell you in this episode, she decided to recreate what it's supposed to look like for her and broke all the rules. And she's my kind of girl. So I really hope you'll enjoy this episode of Rock Bottom Syndicate. Make sure that you jump over to Dr. Me First, her podcast, because she is a firecracker, and really enjoyed meeting with her, her eclectic approach. She is all those things she claims to be beyond physician and life coach. She's an athlete, many other things she loves to do. So I really hope that you will reach out to her. She'll love to hear from you, especially if you're a female physician suffering burnout. You're not alone. And that's the number one message she wants to tell you, that there is help. Check the show notes. All the links are in there on how to reach her at truthrxs, truthprescriptions.com, and Dr. Me First. And also on LinkedIn, you can find her. And I think on Instagram too. So enjoy this episode of the Rock Bottom Syndicate. Hello again, Dr. Errin Weisman, D.O., and we are here today at Rock Bottom Syndicate.
Yes, I am so excited. Not to be rock bottom, to be now explaining how I was rock bottom and now move forward in that.
And let's get the introduction out. Just make sure people know how to reach out to you, your website, how to reach you, all those ways.
Sure. So like you said, I'm Dr. Errin Weisman. I'm a physician life coach, podcaster, practicing doctor, and also fierce advocate for wellness in medicine. You can find me at Truth Prescriptions. You can find my podcast, Dr. Me First, because I think it's really important for us to take care of our own selves first. And then you can also find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Those are the places I love hanging out. I keep it pretty narrow because I feel like you could get kind of overwhelmed with everything out there. But I do love just having good old conversations with people.
That's great. And the truthrxs.com for people that don't realize it's prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're so happy and alive and jovial and badass, but there was some background to before this that kind of set you up for something needing to change, and that's the rock bottom story about burnout. And
Yeah.
I'd love you to share that story with our guests, and hopefully inspire some people who are feeling that way to come to you or someone like you and get some help. So let's hear it.
And also just know that you're not alone, and that this is not a moral failing if you are going through professional burnout. And so my story begins pretty early on. I think I was either early middle school or late elementary when my dad was at an auction. So we're farmers by trade, good old Southern Indiana, digging in the dirt. And we love auctions. And I remember going to an auction with him, and he bought a box of books for $1. You know how sometimes if they're just trying to get rid of stuff, going through that, and I found this set of 4 medical encyclopedias, and I was energized. I couldn't put him down. He still has them to this day where I've dog-eared and put stuff in those. And I was just fascinated by the human body, by disease complex, by these medicines that we could help people with, and that I could know things that could intimately shift people's lives for the better. And I remember one night my younger brother was feeling pretty sick, and I remember getting my little medical encyclopedia out and poking around and doing an abdominal exam on him and telling my dad, I think he's got appendicitis. And, I was like, whatever, that kind of thing. Well, 12 hours later, my brother was in surgery for a ruptured appendix. And it was kind of at that point that I knew, like, I might be good at this. Like, I may have some skills and talents that I had always been a very forward woman. You could call me bossy at times. I see it as leadership skills now. So I knew that there was something great in my future. And married with, taking care of farm animals, my little brother, the encyclopedias, I knew I needed to go further. And so went to college, took MCATs. I decided on osteopathic medicine because I had followed around MDs and DOs, and it seemed like DOs just smiled more and they touched their patients, and that there was something just special that I wanted for my own practice moving forward. So I went to Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences. Got my, first, second year in, they were rough. It was actually the first time that I had traveled a far distance to go to school. I had stayed in Indiana for undergrad. And so it was kind of my first experience of being truly alone and in a very high pressured situation. But I thought, okay, it's going to get better. Then for DO school, you actually get to go on locations for your clinical ships of 3rd and 4th year. And so I returned to Indiana, and I always wanted to be the best. I always wanted to do really good, not just for the grades, but because I really wanted to take care of patients really, really well. So I worked, and I learned, and I stayed late, and I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing that would make me a really, really, really great doctor. And that's when I started to notice that I was just getting really tired. I remember going and getting my labs checked, seeing my own doctor, and, just saying, well, you're probably just a little bit stressed out, Errin. And I thought, okay, I was. I'd gotten married in that time. I was getting ready to start residency, and found out that I was pregnant with my first child. And so I had him within the first 4 months of starting my first year of residency. And if you know anything about an intern year, it's a little bit hectic. And while I was out with my son, there were the thoughts of, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I don't want to go back to work. And I kind of just shoved those down and then proceeded forward. I took a 4-week maternity leave. I was back on the wards doing my residency because I felt like that's where I had to be. This is what I needed to do. This is what I said I was going to do my entire life. And kind of that was the pattern that continued through residency. At the end, when I got out, the fall of 2014, I had signed a contract with an organization. I was going to be the outpatient family medicine doc, returning back to the community that my husband was farming and that his family was from. And from an outsider's view, it probably looked like I had summited the top of the mountain. But for me, I felt like I was in the deepest, darkest ravine that there was. And I looked around and I thought, holy shit, I have climbed the wrong mountain. Like I mentioned before to you, years of my life were dedicated. My children's first, a lot of them during that time, my 20s, so many family holidays that were missed. And just to get out and to look around, I just had felt numb. I felt empty. I didn't know what was going on. This was supposed to be the moment that I had been working for my entire life. I got the big girl job with the contract and the check. I had the 2 kids, the dog, the husband, and the white picket fence. And I just was ready to run away from it all. And so I remember having a conversation with my husband, crying one Sunday evening, and I talk a lot about Sunday dreads because I had them,
Mhm.
of I can't do this. And I remember him asking, what is so bad that you can't do? And I couldn't even put it into words because for so long I had shoved all the emotions away in a closet. I had put all the traumatic experiences that actually happened to us because we take care of patients away. I had let the expectations of what I thought I was supposed to be doing. I have completely forgot about who I was under the white coat. And it just said, I don't know what it is, but I have to do something. And he, at that point, said, just give it 6 months. If we give me 6 months to try to figure this out, because I had a mountain of loans at that point, too, and we'll get it figured out, okay? And so I got online too, and I was talking to friends, to colleagues, trying to figure out, does anybody else feel like this, or am I just crazy? You know, do I need to like be locked up somewhere? Because supposedly this is supposed to be the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I don't want it. And I found that no, there were so many other people too that had gotten through this experience of medical training and realized for the reason that they went into medicine did not match what they were actually doing. And you know, and the phrase that comes to me is, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. I I can bulldog anybody down for hours. I
Mhm.
always tell my patients, I may not be the smartest, but I have the tenacity that we will figure this out.
Yeah.
And you know, that tenacity eventually runs out when it's on willpower.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you were actually like? You're describing it now, but I'm not seeing the pain in that you were. I'm not seeing it now in you. Um, just to help people who are watching understand like some of the real struggle you were going through because
Yeah, like a for instance would be, I would come home from clinic rushing to get all of my notes done, all of my paperwork done, pushing the last patient out of the day so that I could go pick my kid up, who was the last one at daycare, who they were trying to push out the door too because we were running late, to bring them home, feed them, bathe them, and throw them in bed as fast as possible. And I remember sitting by the bathtub one night with my beautiful little boys and just putting my hand on my head and thinking like, this is not what motherhood was supposed to be. It's not about just going to work so I can pay the bills, feeding them hot dogs, and then trying not to lose my shit while they splash water all over the bathtub because they're just being little boys
yeah.
that I didn't even know. And like I said, I think it came because I couldn't let myself experience the bad emotions, that I also couldn't experience joy. I couldn't experience happiness anymore. There was no creativity or curiosity even. It was just about getting through that day.
So you were like in survivor mode, not
Absolutely.
you even it almost sounds like you didn't experience depression. It was more just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, probably if you'd had me like fill out a PHQ-9, I probably would have bombed it at that point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that I was inherently depressed just internally. It was the systems that I had set in place for myself. Like, this is how it's supposed to look. This is how the type of doctor you're going to be. This is the type of mom you're going to be. This is the type of community leader. And then a lot of the external of, can you come sit on the board at the Chamber of Commerce? Can you be on the library? Can you do this at church? That I had just taken on this huge weight in addition to having all this backlog of issues that I didn't even recognize, that it kind of came to a head at that point. And, you know, along with, I mean, there was depressed moods, but there was just like this overarching, if you're a Harry Potter fan, I always talk about I had a Dementor. I felt like everything was just being sucked out of me and there was no happiness in the world. And I was almost angry at other people who liked their job and loved their life and were joyful. And I
Mm-hmm.
got at times resentful for people who go on vacation. And I was just like, what is going on with this? But it wasn't until I realized that I had a total misalignment of what I was doing, how I was operating in my day to day, and who I really was at my core.
Mm-hmm.
And so what really rocked me to that rock bottom, like I mentioned, was those Sunday dreads. I wasn't on call, so it would be an okay weekend. You know, we do family stuff. I try to sleep and catch up. And then it would be Sunday night, afternoon, evening time. And then it would just be like this huge weight would just come on my shoulders and my chest. And
Mhm.
I just thought, what? And my husband, he even mentioned that he would just notice my energy would just change and like, what's going on in your head right now? And I'm like, I have to go there tomorrow. And it's not like there was somebody with a baseball bat ready to just beat the hell out of me when I showed up to the office, but it was that weight of responsibility that I had to put on the mask again to
Mhm.
be who I had made that I was going to be in the world that really wasn't who I was, that kind of descended. And also it felt like a trap. It felt like a hamster wheel that I was never going to be able to get off, because this is what I said I was always going to do,
Mhm.
but I hated it.
Yeah.
And so it was that fear of change, but then also the fear of, if not this, then what? And I
Mm.
had no idea, because to me, that was all that was presented in training. This is the kind of doctor you become. This is how you do it. And then you go out in the world, and then supposedly you're supposed to love your life. And that just didn't fit me.
Mhm.
So really what it came from, when my rock bottom, when hope entered my life, was when I found my coach, my first coach. Her name was Dr. Philippa Keneally. And we got on a conversation, and she even asked me that. She said, do you have hope? And I said, I don't even want to answer that question. And she said, no, seriously, is there something that you can look forward to in 1, 3, 5 years from now? And I couldn't even answer her question at that point, because I was so covered up in everything. I was so crispy to the core that I couldn't even do anything. And so that was the first thing she did, was she kind of reaffirmed to me that change is possible, that this is not going to be my forever, and that she was going to help and assist me in whatever way she could. And that was what lit that hope fire back into me.
Mhm.
And one of the things that she really inspired me to do was, what are the things that in the past enlivened you? What were the things that you used to do that you would lose track of time in? And I said, I love books. I'm a book dragon. Forget bookworm. I can tear through them. And I said, okay, your homework is, and this was so sad to me, I lived a good majority of my summers in the library as a kid, and I didn't even have an active library card at that time. And
Mhm.
she said, okay, your homework is, you have to go to the library and get a library card and check out one of your most favorite books that you read.
Yeah.
And that set me on a path to reconnecting with who I really, really was, when you stripped off all the layers and all the expectations. And some of them were imposed on me, but a lot of them I had put on myself.
Yeah.
And that really helped me to start climbing out of my rock bottom and really lean into a life of who I really was.
I want to take a little step back to where you said when you first connected with Philippa,
Mm-hmm.
um, where she made you some promises, and something happened in there where what gave you reason to trust her? Because you didn't believe it yourself, and it was that
Right.
arc, that connection between you, that spark.
I think it was hearing her story when we got on the phone first time. She was a family medicine doc too. She was a mom too.
Mhm.
She had navigated feelings like that I had felt,
Yeah.
but she was in a place in her life that she truly could say that she was happy. And I think it was knowing, if she can do it, I can do it. And
Yeah.
I finally felt like I had found someone who I could look eye to eye to and say, we are same.
Yeah.
So if you can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah. So that's the brilliance of what you're doing now to help other female physicians, because if you can do it, they can do it. Even
Mm-hmm.
me as a nurse, I'm saying, well, we're in the same medical field. We know a lot of the same things. And so we have different roles, but if you can do it, I can do it. So it's a huge piece, that leap of faith that the person has to take when they don't know what's on the other side, but they
Mm-hmm.
know they got to jump.
Yeah. And that's what I always tell my clients is, I'm just 10 steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you and say I got it all figured out. I don't. But that's the beauty of coaching too, is that I honor that person because their answers are within them.
Yeah.
And to be their coach and to enter into that kind of relationship, it's not as I'm a mentor. I don't have to tell them how to do it. I just get to be a mirror and purely reflect back to them what they're seeing, what they're saying, what they're feeling, so that it can be more revealing on their own path. Because I think where we get it wrong sometimes in the therapeutic model is that we want to give people their answers so then they can go out into the world and live them, when actually I think it's about discovering and uncovering your answers so that you can be empowered and live them out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Once you learn to learn that the answers are within, and if you need some information along the way, there's Dr. Google and there's Dr. Weisman and there's other places you can go for that information, right? But when you get that feeling of empowerment where you actually can solve this puzzle, that becomes a lot of fun in itself.
I noticed a big shift in my doctoring and my medical practice when I was starting to get coached, and then when I started to become a coach through coaches training, is I started to release the results as mine. And I started realizing that someone's cholesterol level or their A1C or, whether or not they're taking their medicines, that's no longer mine to hold. I am simply there to be an assistant to say, this could possibly help you, and having conversations with patients instead of coming from a place of authority, now coming to them as a partner and saying, I think this would be the best for you. What do you think? Rather than saying, you need to take this every single day and I'll see you back in 3 months. It really shifted how I practiced medicine, and it honestly helped with some of my provider anxiety, because I would hold to, oh my God, did Mrs. Such and Such take her insulin today because I got that reading and it was 400. I had to remember that I don't go home with them and smack the donuts out of their hands. I have to empower them to say, here is your medicine. This is how to properly use it. You can choose not to, or you can choose to make other choices. But at the end of the day, it's not mine to hold. And I think that's what really was a big shift in my own life, is just knowing that me and my thoughts are the only thing that I really have control over, and that I just have to believe in other people enough to let them hold their own results.
It's a huge difference. It just makes for such a better relationship and a more powerful healing tool, I think, for the patient, because they realize that they can go path A, path B here. They know now, they've been educated, but the choice is still within them.
And I think that's one area where we're going to have to change in our medical system, is to allow that time and space for that to happen, and not just you fit in this algorithm and this is where we plug you in at. It's still having that relationship-based communication to say, okay, we can try this, or we can try that, and we can try this. And also acknowledging that I don't know 100% how this is going to pan out. You may have a side effect to this. You may have a side effect to doing nothing. But let's walk this together. And I think that's what both on the physician side, but also on the physician coaching side too, to say, I don't know how this is going to turn out. You may quit your job and move to Tahiti and love it. You may quit your job and be back in 6 months. I don't know. But what I do know is because of the doing, what you will learn along the way that will make the most impact.
Yeah. Looking back now over that whole process, I know it wasn't your intention to hit rock bottom, but it happened. It was life, and rock bottom has a basement. There are times where we think, nothing else bad can happen, but life just keeps coming at us. So do you have any thoughts to share about how you might do it differently, or how a person might preempt or step in a little sooner than having to hit rock bottom?
Absolutely.
Have to hit rock bottom?
I think it would have started for me if I had had some awareness of what was actually going on, that I was using coping mechanisms that had served me in the past, which is my tenacity, my ability to move forward, to shove away emotions, to outwork anybody.
Mhm.
If I had had some awareness that just like fire, that is a positive tool, it can also be extremely destructive.
Mhm.
I think if I had had a coach while I was a resident, that would have been such a huge tool for me. Or even having a female faculty member that I could have gone to and say, this is kind of what I'm experiencing. Is this like normal, or should like we be throwing up some warning signs here? I think the other, I do 3 A's. So awareness would be super important. Having some sort of assessment on how am I really doing right now. Now, I do a lot with my clients that I work with, and I'll share one with you that you can share with your audience. It's called the Wheel of Life, and it's just simply measuring like how satisfied are you in your different domains of wellness in your life. And I think if I had had that sooner, I could have realized that for me, the burnout wasn't just in the professional area that it was at zero, but it was when everything was shrinking in. All satisfaction was going to pot.
Mhm.
So having those kind of like mile markers of how we doing right now and having that check-in system, I think would have helped. And then I think too, the third A is I always talk about action, and it would have been getting out of my head and actually doing actionable steps to help myself in the future. So one area where I hit rock bottom and then I went into rock bottom's basement was when I went to my employer and I said, I can't do this. I need help. And what they did essentially was listen to me, pat me on the head, and send me back
Mhm.
with no change, no modified plan, no action steps to say, we hear you, we acknowledge this is going on, how can we help? It was just more of just let her get it out and move on. And so I really did hit the basement at that point because I felt trapped. I mean, like I mentioned, I had 6 figures of loans. I also had a forgivable loan, which is what they call a bonus now in doctor speak, that I would have had to pay back to my organization. I had a new home mortgage, and I had a farming husband who I love dearly, but they don't make no money. And I thought, oh my God, they're not going to help me. I've just poured my bleeding heart out on the table of my boss,
Mhm.
and nothing's going to change. And I just remember going like, where do I go from here? I remember Bubble Guppies playing in the other room and just sitting on my bed and just sobbing. Like, where do I go from here? And luckily, I had that coaching call then that next week with Philippa to help me realize that I wasn't stuck and that I could go in places. And she empowered me to make some changes. And eventually, I got my schedule changed. I didn't leave that job. I just backed down to 3 days a week where it was more manageable and I would have time to clear. But I would say having the action step of when you feel like you are at your lowest low, then
Mhm.
you know you need to do something, which is reach out and ask for help. And if you don't get it at the first place, you go to the second place and you go to the third place and you keep reaching out, because eventually you will find that point that rings true and you will find the exact help that you need. But I did. I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody outside of my family for jeopardizing my reputation in the community.
Mhm.
I was worried about talking to professional organizations that I would jeopardize my medical license.
Mhm.
And so it can be a very isolating spot. And so I just would encourage people to have that awareness, to have some sort of assessment point to see how you're doing, and then to ask for help in some action.
I know from experience as well that when you go that far down the road or that far deep into the rock bottom, that your brain, you're not getting enough sleep, you're probably not eating properly, you might be using substances by now or doing some other numbing kind of behavior, overworking, just not connecting anymore in a meaningful way, to the point where now you're living in the amygdala, you're living in your fight or flight, you're living in parts of your brain that are meant to help for emergencies only, and you're trying to think in that part of your brain. And people can really get so low that they can want to end their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is a big problem. I think that's probably behind some of what motivates you to help.
Yeah, I've lost 2 medical school colleagues
Mm-hmm.
and several other colleagues that I've worked with, and physician suicide is a huge deal. right now in the physician community. I don't think patients know about it until it happens to their provider. But yeah, it is. It's a big deal, and I talk about it. Of course, there's ending your life, suicide, but then there's career suicides. Will people just leave? You go to your doctor's office for an appointment, and they're like, "Well, Doctor such and such is not there anymore." I mean, they essentially suicide their career because they're just like, "I cannot do it anymore." We also know that burned out physicians have, I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's something outrageous where they leave their families. They get divorced and they just try to start over again in a whole new place. And so, yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that people know that no matter how bad it feels in that moment, there is help available. And so if you are feeling suicidal, if you feel like you have nowhere else to go, there is phone numbers that you can talk to. If you're a professional like me as a physician and worried about being outed and with your professional license, there are actually safe numbers that you can call that are confidential, and we can provide those in the show notes so that you don't feel like you have to jeopardize your career to get the help that you need.
Yeah, I think that's a very unique place where you're in with all those. I mean, other people think about social, influence, but for physicians and so much is at stake, I could see why you would stay in hiding longer, and that the depth of whatever is happening, that rock bottom is just getting worse and worse, and it can be too late to get help because your brain isn't functioning right anymore to be able to help you solve the problem in the that right part of it.
Well, another problem, like we said, like we all have great tools, and as a physician, I'm a prescriber. And so some physicians feel like they need to start managing their own prescriptions to medicate themselves through, just as if they would do a patient. But that's this very slippery, dangerous slope. And so I always caution providers who are doing that they intimately need more help more quickly, because they're trying to navigate waters that aren't safe. I mean, to be perfectly honest, because they're scared. And anytime that we're doing things out of scarcity, out of fear, out of the amygdala with anger, we want to get it back out of that system into our higher cognitive thinking. But you can only do that when you don't feel threatened and you're not in survival mode anymore.
Wow. Well, it's a lot. Is there, we're about out of time. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Well, I guess I would say I would give the Shining story. So I obviously came through it. And it wasn't easy. It was, but that first step I think was the hardest, to admit that maybe I couldn't figure it out on my own. And that's why I needed a coach. That was the hardest step. And then it was the persistence of a million steps later. So a short synopsis of out of the depths is I was able to make a shift in that current position that I was in when I was going through the depths. That gave me what I felt like a breath of air. So then on the days when I was in clinic, I could dive down to the bottom and come back up again. And that's because of how powerful coaching was for me. I was able to go and get my own training, and I can successfully say I've been coaching for 5 years now. After I got to a healing enough spot, I was actually able to love that job through it and then leave and transition to something else. And so since then, I've done a lot of really cool things as a doctor. I worked as a country emergency medicine doc, which helped me to grow tremendously in my skills and really empowered me, like, wow, I really couldn't do anything. I work with residents now to be an example to them of what it's like to be a woman in medicine who's thriving and not just surviving. I have my podcast, like I said. I coach colleagues. I'm a consultant for several different health organizations on physician well-being and wellness. And I'll always, I think, because of my story and because of my experience, be an advocate for better mental health support for everyone. Not just patients, but also us who take care of it, and try to help remove the stigma that I have to be perfect in this job. All that I really have to be is me. I have to show up as my best self.
Mhm.
And wouldn't we want that for everyone? Just to show up as their best self in whatever role that they're doing in. And so, yeah, the kids are doing great. I think I work as much as I did before, but the alignment piece of where I feel my impact and how I can truly help and heal people, because that was one thing I had to rearrange my identity. I'm not, I'm a doctor. I actually learned that I am a human who is meant to be here to heal. And so now, if I, through my podcast, I feel like I help people heal. Through my coaching, I help people heal. Through my doctoring, I'm again helping people heal. And so there is light. And I just want to put that out for people, is that it's just a journey and it doesn't stop. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it just makes it so much easier when you surround yourself with other good people.
Mhm. The irony in all this story that hits me is how, when you find, because partly because of being a doctor, being who you are, your personality, where you're so headstrong, and you, for you of all people to say, I need help. And when you finally asked for help, she made you do it yourself anyway. That it wasn't anyone who fixed you. You weren't broken. And so it was the asking for help just came back on you solving it. And that's just the beauty of the whole story for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly true. Like, we're not broken. We
Yeah.
all come in with our traumas, and we're a little beat up, but at our core, we're not broken.
Yeah, yeah. And the power is there all along. Like Dorothy's read the slippers, right? The thinking about in the Wizard of Oz, where she's always had the power to go home, and it brings that back to me. So.
Well, and that's one thing too. Like, I questioned about even going into medicine. Like, was that a mistake? And now, coming further past that point and seeing the whole landscape,
Yeah.
I know that's exactly what I needed to do at that point, because I was leaning into what I felt was my best path.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing something slightly different, and that's okay. And so, no, I'm really grateful to have become a physician. I will, in some ways, probably always function as a physician, but just understanding too, like I said when we started the other conversation, that there's a lot of nouns, adjectives, and verbs that go along with me, and just remembering all of that.
Well, and you have tremendous insight now into some of the problems, which makes you uniquely prepared as a coach, like I can't, like no one else can, that you can see and help people. So that's a gift.
Well, Joyce, thank you so much for letting me come on and share my story. And if there's anybody out there who can relate or have felt similar things, I would encourage them just to reach out. I love hearing from folks. Again, you can find me on my podcast, Dr. Me First. You can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And then, of course, on the website, there's a way to just email me directly at truthprescriptions@truthrxs.com.
Perfect. Well, I'm so happy to have you here on Rock Bottom Syndicate, and we will share this story, and also for listeners of Rock Bottom to go back to Totally Well podcast and listen to the episode there with Dr. Weisman, Errin Weisman, telling a little bit more about the function of her practice and what she does, all the different things. So thanks, Errin. I really, really appreciate you being here today and being so vulnerable, sharing your story to help so many people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.